No joke. Summer in Kyoto feels like you're being grilled on a frying pan. 皆さんこんにちは and welcome to Let's Ask Shogo. Kyoto is a city in Japan that was the capital for more than 1,000 years. When you imagine the scenery, what do you see? Would it be the spectacular sights of the shrines and temples? The traditional streets with the maiko walking in their beautiful kimono? Although these are all things that can actually be enjoyed, there are a few things that can be quite different from what most people imagine. So today, as a man born and living in Kyoto, I will introduce 5 facts about the city that you probably didn't know. I will be counting down my 5 picks, so be sure to stick around till the end. This video will help you to deepen your understanding towards the formal capital of Japan, and is recommended to those who are willing to travel or study in Kyoto. And even if you get confused somewhere during the story, that's okay. I will wrap everything up again at the end of the video in today's conclusion. それでは本日も参りましょう。Number 5. Kyoto has the most number of university and graduate students. Many people, including Japanese, have the image that Kyoto is an old and traditional city because of its long history. That is not completely false, but at the same time, Kyoto is a very young city too. Kyoto has 34 universities, and the number of university and graduate school students was 154,144 in 2017. This number is actually number 1 out of all other prefectures in Japan, including large cities like Tokyo and Osaka. We can say that about 10% of the Kyoto population is a university student. By the way, in 2019, before the corona crisis, there are more than 10,000 students from foreign countries too. Why are there so many students in Kyoto though? There are many different theories, but these are the ones that I think are true. 1. Long history and culture. 2. Wide area of learning. 3. The cost of living is not as expensive compared to other big cities. Many young Japanese kids too have hopes and dreams of living in Kyoto because of its traditional culture, national treasures, and beautiful nature. I too long for the day to live in such a city, and that's why I enrolled in a university in Kyoto myself. The areas that you can study in Kyoto are very wide too, from arts like anime or religions like Zen Buddhism and the newest technologies. There are 15 Nobel Prize laureates who have studied in Kyoto. The cost of living in Kyoto is slightly cheaper than the other big cities. It of course isn't cheap, but for example, the rent is about 1.5 to 2 times more expensive in Tokyo. So if you're willing to study in Japan, Kyoto is a good choice, not only for its long history and culture, but also because there are many restaurants and shops that are designed for students. I've been making quite a lot of videos talking about the tiresome side of Kyoto, but I still recommend you living here. It's a great city. Number 4. Kyoto consumes the most amount of bread and coffee in Japan. When you imagine the people of Kyoto spending their daily lives, they might be sitting in a traditional style tatami room wearing a kimono and drinking tea. Although Kyoto is the mainland of tea ceremony culture, the tea consumption rate is only 6th from the top. But the consumption rate of coffee and bread is number 1. Sorry, I may be destroying your images of Kyoto. But come to think of it, my grandparents, who were born and raised in Kyoto, do always have bread and coffee for breakfast and hardly any rice. There are lots of old and new bakery shops everywhere in Kyoto. including the ones that are in train stations. From my image, almost every train station has a bread and coffee shop next to it, including the station that's closest to my home. So, if you ever come to Kyoto, trying out the bread and coffee is actually a really good idea for enjoying the local cuisine. They are a very important part of our culture too. And the quality is not bad either, because the competition of the stores is fierce. But why does Kyoto consume so much bread and coffee? Of course, there is no absolute answer, but these three are the ones that I found through some research. 1. The people of Kyoto like new things. 2. Anpan became very popular. 3. Kyoto has many craftsmen and bread was convenient fast food. The first reason, although I found quite a lot of people talking about it, is hard for me to agree with. This is because if people actually liked new things, we should have more technologies in the city. It's very disappointing to see that there are still a lot of places where you can't even pay with credit cards, let alone apps for online payment. Next, about the anpan. It's a traditional kind of bread in Japan that has red bean paste filled in it. The model of anpanman for anyone who knows this anime. Some say that because Kyoto had an abundant supply of red bean paste due to all the sweets made for tea ceremonies, it was easier to supply anpan and it became popular, which led to the popularity of bread grow in Kyoto. Kyoto is a city of craftsmen of pottery, clothing, dyeing, and items like fans. These craftsmen are of course very busy with their work, so bread that can quickly be eaten with one hand was very convenient. This is the same reason sushi was a popular fast food in Tokyo a long time ago. However, the center city of Kyoto is not close to any oceans like Tokyo, so it was difficult for them to supply fish, and that's why bread was more convenient for them. Number 3, Kyoto doesn't have the most number of shrines and temples. If you plan to come to Kyoto and search what to do in Kyoto, visiting the shrines and temples will surely come up as recommendations. It's quite understandable. Kyoto was the capital of Japan for more than 1,000 years. There's no doubt it was the central hub of religion too, right? However, the number of shrines and temples don't even hit top 3 in Japan. Kyoto is 18th on the list for the most number of shrines, and 5th for temples. The prefecture that has the most shrines and temples is Aichi Prefecture. It is the prefecture that has Nagoya, one of the biggest business cities in Japan. Although in Japan it's a fairly known prefecture, maybe some of you haven't heard of this place once before. Why does Aichi have so many shrines and temples? Again, there are no concrete reasons why, but these are the ones that are most widely known. 1. It is a key point of transportation. 2. It is close to the Kansai region, which was the center area of Buddhism. 3. It was the mainland of the 3 heroes in the Sengoku era. Aichi Prefecture, as you can see in this picture, is at the center of Tokaido, the main route of transportation in Japan. This means that many people with different beliefs lived or traveled here, therefore leading to many different shrines to be built. Although Aichi is not counted as one of the prefectures of the Kansai region, it is rather close to Shiga Prefecture, where many of the small temples derived. Another interesting theory is because Aichi Prefecture was the homeland of the 3 heroes in the Sengoku era. The Sengoku era was a 150-year-long civil war period, so there were many warriors who died in battle. So in order to mourn the souls of those who died, there were many temples built. However, not having many numbers of shrines and temples doesn't mean that Kyoto is not the center of religion. In Kyoto, there are shrines and temples that had very strong religious and political power throughout history. So many of the smaller religious buildings were forced to merge with the bigger ones. This is why Kyoto doesn't have that many shrines and temples in number. Number 2. Kyoto has the most number of extremely hot days in Japan. If you see commercials or anime scenes that show Kyoto, there are girls in beautiful kimono walking through the traditional streets. Taking a look at their refreshing smiles and beautiful scenery, I bet you wouldn't imagine that Kyoto is actually one of the hottest places in Japan. No joke, summer in Kyoto feels like you're being grilled on a frying pan. And don't forget about the humidity that reaches 96% at peak times. By the way, the definition of an extremely hot day in Japan is a day that is hotter than 35 degrees Celsius. While the average number of extremely hot days throughout Japan is 5.2 days, Kyoto on average has about 15.4 days every year. Why does Kyoto get so hot compared to other places in Japan? It is because of the geographical features. Kyoto is an inland prefecture surrounded by mountains. Or in other words, it is a basin environment. The air heated by the sun expands, becomes lighter, and rises. The higher the altitude, the cooler it gets. The air is cooled, contracts, becomes heavy, and comes down. On flat ground, hot air escapes upwards and cold air flows in. However, because Kyoto is a basin, the cold air cannot come in because it is blocked by the mountains. Even if the air inside the basin gets heated by the sun and expands, cool air does not flow in from the surroundings. Therefore, the heated air cannot rise. This leads to the air in the basin being heated more and more. By the way, winter is also super cold in Kyoto because it can go down to about 0 degrees Celsius. It especially feels colder because the buildings are designed to release the summer heat. The climate has a drastic temperature difference. And this is one of the reasons why there are some people who avoid living in Kyoto. If you're planning to come to Kyoto, be careful not to get dehydrated in summer and to bring an extra coat in winter. Now, you might be thinking, why would the people of Japan make such a prefecture the capital for more than 1,000 years? You might think they were crazy, right? But of course, there are some understandable reasons. 1. Surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, it is difficult for enemies to attack. 2. Water resources were rich because of the rivers. 3. The drastic change of the 4 seasons helped to enjoy the beautiful nature. Personally, I'd like to add one more reason. The cold beer you drink here in summer is the best. Now, before I get to number 1, let me introduce you some of the things that I couldn't include in today's ranking, but are interesting to know. 1. The unmarried rate of those in their 20s is number 1. 2. Japanese sake production is number 2. 3. Kyoto loves ramen. 1. The unmarried rate of those in their 20s is number 1. It is widely believed that the young people who grew up in Kyoto have the tendency of wanting to stay in Kyoto. This makes it very hard for them to find a partner who works in a prefecture far away, or may often be transferred to other prefectures. Also, as I've explained in a different video, the people of Kyoto have high pride and have a strong brand orientation. And their commitment to land and family traits also seems to make them cautious towards marriage. I am one of the few people in Kyoto in their 20s that is married and has children too. 2. Japanese sake production is number 2. Kyoto is actually famous for Japanese sake too. Especially Fushimi in Kyoto is called the city of sake, along with Nada in Hyogo Prefecture, which is #1 in production. If you are a Japanese sake lover, I really recommend you visit Fushimi if you have the chance. There are many restaurants that serve delicious food and sake, and places where you can tour these sake breweries. I'm hoping to visit one of these places in the future in my Kyoto Hidden Gems series, so I hope you can look forward to that too. 3. Kyoto loves ramen. Although it's not in any ranking or anything, the people of Kyoto love ramen. There's even an area called Ichijoji Ramen Street, where there are about 15 ramen restaurants that are mashed up in a small area. What's surprising is that the soup style of ramen in Kyoto is very thick with muddy pork back fat. Very different from the images you might have from the healthy Japanese traditional meals like washoku or kaiseki, the kind that is super bad for your health but irresistibly delicious. By the way, if you're gonna have thick soup ramen in Kyoto, be sure to visit Tenka Ippin, a ramen restaurant born in Kyoto. They are the best. Now, back to the original ranking. Number 1. Kyoto supports the Communist Party the most. This is a fact that many Japanese don't know about either. Taking a look at the data from 2009 to 2019, the Communist Party average turnout is 8.42% nationwide, while it is 15.41% in Kyoto, which is the highest in Japan. But why is this so? As far as I have done some research, these 3 are the theories that I have found. 1. The more university students there are more supporters of the Communist Party. 2. The consciousness of resistance against Tokyo and strong political power. 3. Inagawa Torazo, who worked as the Communist Party, was the governor of Kyoto for 28 years. Data shows that there is a correlation between the number of university students and the percentage of votes. Also, for a long time, Kyoto has had a kind of consciousness of resistance towards Tokyo and strong political power, since the capital has been moved to Tokyo after westernization. And the Communist Party has gathered young students and people that are against and disapprove of the Liberal Democratic Party. Lastly, there is a historical theory to this too. There was a man called Minagawa Torazo who was the governor of Kyoto for more than 28 years. He was a supported and popular politician in Kyoto, and the fact that he worked with the Communist Party still has an impact on Kyoto today. However, as I've explained in some of my past videos, talking about politics is basically thought of as a taboo in Japan. If you ever have a chance to talk to a Japanese, even if you want to ask about politics, please be very careful. I would personally hesitate talking about it, even with the closest of friends. Then lastly, today's conclusion. I introduced 5 facts you probably didn't know about Kyoto. Number 5. Kyoto has the most number of university and graduate students. Kyoto is not only an old city with long history, but also has young power, having more than 150,000 university and graduate school students, and many foreign students too. Kyoto's environment is perfect for students to study, and I personally recommend it to anyone who is planning to study in Japan as a man who graduated from university in Kyoto. Number 4. Kyoto consumes the most amount of bread and coffee in Japan. Despite many people having the image of people in Kyoto drinking matcha every day while wearing a kimono, actually they are in love with bread and coffee. If you ever come to Kyoto, trying out the bread and coffee here is actually a good idea for enjoying the culture. Number 3. Kyoto doesn't have the most number of shrines and temples. Although Kyoto was the capital of Japan for more than 1,000 years and was a center of religion too, Aichi has the most number of shrines and temples in Japan. This is because Kyoto has many strong religious powers that took in the smaller shrines and temples, which resulted in reducing the total number. Number 2. Kyoto has the most number of extremely hot days in Japan. While the national average of hot days is 5.2 days, Kyoto on average has about 15.4 days every year. This is because Kyoto is an inland prefecture surrounded by mountains. Winter can drop to about 0 degrees Celsius too, so when you come to Kyoto, you need to be prepared. 3 things that barely made it into the ranking are: 1. The unmarried rate of people in their 20s is number 1. 2. Japanese sake production is number 2. 3. Kyoto loves ramen. Number 1. Kyoto supports the Communist Party the most. According to the data from 2009 to 2019, the Communist Party average turnout is 8.42% nationwide, while it is 15.41% in Kyoto, which is the highest in Japan. Some theories say that this is because the people of Kyoto have a kind of resistance towards Tokyo and powerful political power, but no one knows for sure. So that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If this video revealed to you a different side of Kyoto, please hit the like button to let me know. And my goal is to achieve 100,000 subscribers by January 2022, so your help would mean a lot. In this channel, you can take a closer look at Japanese traditional culture, tips on traveling to Kyoto, and social problems in Japan. So learners and lovers of Japanese language and culture, be sure to subscribe to enjoy more content. Thanks again, and I'll see you again soon. どうもありがとうございました。Everyone, once again, thank you very much for watching this video and welcome to the Omake Talk. So I like to talk about a few things today here at the Omake Talk. First, about 2 things about today's video. Number 1 is that the rankings I introduced today, like, the number 1 for consumption of bread and coffee and such. The rankings, of course, will change every year. So I hope you can keep that in mind. One interesting thing though about the bread and coffee, by the way, the number of McDonald's in Japan, Kyoto has, I think it was number 1 for 1 year. Was at some season it was number 1 for McDonald's too. Well, anyways, and another thing, in the video I said that I can't agree with the idea that Kyoto, the people of Kyoto likes new things. And when I was editing this video, I thought they're probably talking about the people who are grandpas and grandmas now. When they were younger, they were probably more interested in new things and more acceptable, I think. And probably, like when my grandparents' generation was younger. So they're probably not talking about it now. They're probably talking about the season when the anpan, all the bread, these culture were still new at that time. So I think it's not something that's still inherited to this generation, to our generation, because I don't really feel that Kyoto is like a city that likes new things or has the newest of everything, and definitely not. So, and one last thing. There's a lot of people who would ask me, when is like the best timing to visit Kyoto? And I like to talk about that here. So if there is something that you really want to do or see, like for example, the cherry blossoms, you have to come in March or in April, or the autumn leaves, you have to come in October or November in order to see it. There's no other season that you can see these things, right? But if you're not, if you want to avoid the crowd and you don't have to watch these flowers or their leaves, and you just want to see the city and the shrines and temples and such, my recommendation would definitely be coming here in May. Yes, and that's because in the cherry blossom season in April, it's going to be March and April is super busy, and in June it's actually the rain season, so it's going to be raining quite a lot. And summer break, there's going to be a lot of kids who are off school. They'll be traveling to Kyoto. In autumn, there's the leaves, and New Year's season, Christmas, New Year's season is going to be busy too, and such. So, and it's going to be cold too, right? And so May is perfect. There's like nothing special going on, which is a good thing, and it's not too hot, not too cold, and everything. There's not too many people. It's pretty calm at that season. So yeah, so if you just want to enjoy quiet Kyoto as much as possible, once it's possible, I would definitely recommend you coming in May. Alright, so now everyone, if there's anything else you'd like to know about Kyoto, feel free to ask me anytime, like where to go, what to do, what to see, when to come, and for like if you're a family, if you're a couple, or feel free to contact me anytime. Instagram will be the best way to do it, by the way, if you like. Alright, then thank you so much for watching this video. Goodbye. ありがとうございました。また。